The young doctor froze when he saw her name on the chart. His fingers tightened around the folder. Across the room, the shy girl on the exam table stared at the floor, her hands trembling in her lap. Neither of them expected this meeting. And neither of them were prepared for what it would uncover. Before we go any further, if you love stories that remind you how powerful simple kindness can be, make sure you're subscribed to Kindness Tellies. Tap like if this story touches you, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let me tell you how that silent moment in a small clinic changed 2 lives forever. Her name was Lily Thompson, and at 19, she had mastered the art of being invisible. She lived in a quiet Ohio suburb where the houses looked nearly identical and everyone seemed to know everyone's business. Lily worked part-time at a grocery store, stocking shelves in the early mornings before the crowds came in. She kept her head down, her dark hair falling like a curtain around her face, avoiding eye contact whenever possible. Lily had always been shy, but the past year had made it worse. Her mother had passed away after a long battle with cervical cancer. It had been just the 2 of them for as long as she could remember. Her father had left when she was little, and the only memories she had of him were blurry and unreliable. After her mother died, Lily stayed in their small rented house alone, taking extra shifts to cover the bills and skipping college even though she had been accepted. There was one thing her mother had made her promise before she passed. "Take care of your health," she had whispered from the hospital bed. "Don't avoid doctors the way I did. Promise me." Lily had nodded through tears and promised, even though hospitals and clinics terrified her. For months, she ignored the dull pain in her lower abdomen. She told herself it was stress. Or bad posture. Or anything but something serious. But the pain grew sharper, and the memory of her mother's regret haunted her. So one Tuesday afternoon, after rehearsing the decision in her mind for weeks, Lily walked into a new women's health clinic that had recently opened on Main Street. The clinic looked different from the others in town. It didn't feel cold or sterile. The walls were painted a soft blue, and there were fresh flowers on the reception desk. A sign read, "You matter here." Lily almost turned around anyway. The receptionist smiled warmly and handed her a clipboard. Lily filled out the forms with shaky hands. When she got to the insurance section, her stomach tightened. She didn't have any. Her mother's policy had ended, and Lily's part-time job didn't offer benefits. She left it blank and tried not to think about it. When her name was called, she followed the nurse down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. She kept her eyes on the floor as she was guided into an exam room and told to wait for the doctor. That's when the door opened and everything shifted. The man who stepped in looked too young to be a specialist. He couldn't have been more than 28 or 29. He wore simple navy scrubs and wire-rimmed glasses. There was nothing flashy about him, nothing that hinted at the fact that he was the founder of this clinic and the owner of 3 others across the state. Most people in town knew about the young tech entrepreneur who had sold his medical software company for millions and decided to invest in community healthcare. Few knew he was also a practicing physician. His name was Dr. Ethan Hayes. When he glanced at the chart and then at Lily, recognition flickered across his face. He hesitated, just for a second. "Lily Thompson?" he asked gently. She nodded, barely meeting his eyes. He studied her face, and something softened in his expression. "Did you grow up on Maple Drive?" he asked. Her head snapped up, startled. "Yes." "How do you know that?" A small smile touched his lips. "You probably don't remember me. I lived 3 houses down when we were kids. You used to sit on the curb with a sketchbook." Memories rushed back to her. A tall boy who used to carry stacks of books. The quiet neighbor who once helped her pick up crayons after they spilled across the sidewalk. "Ethan," she whispered. He nodded. The air in the room felt suddenly smaller. Lily's face burned with embarrassment. Of all the doctors in the world, it had to be someone who remembered her as the awkward little girl who barely spoke. He must have sensed her discomfort because his voice grew even gentler. "I know this might feel strange, but you're in good hands. I promise. Something in the way he said it eased a tiny piece of her fear. As the appointment began, Ethan kept his tone calm and respectful. He explained every step before doing anything, making sure she felt in control. He didn't rush. He didn't look at his watch. He asked about her symptoms and listened, really listened, without interrupting. When he asked about her family history, Lily's voice faltered. She told him about her mother. About the late diagnosis. About the guilt that still clung to her. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. I'm so sorry, he said. Your mom used to wave at my mom across the yard. She always looked proud of you. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. No one had spoken about her mother in months. It felt like the world had already moved on. After the examination, Ethan stepped out to review her preliminary results. Lily sat alone, her thoughts spiraling. She imagined worst-case scenarios. She imagined hospital rooms and whispered regrets. When he returned, his expression was serious but not alarmed. He explained that there were signs of a treatable condition, something that needed attention but had been caught early. Relief washed over her so suddenly that she felt dizzy. Then came the question she had been dreading. About the billing, she said quietly, staring at her hands. I don't have insurance. I can't really afford. Ethan held up a hand gently. Lily, this clinic was built for people exactly like you. She frowned, confused. He pulled a chair closer so they were at eye level. He told her that after selling his company, he had realized how many women in small towns skipped critical checkups because of cost or fear. His own aunt had died from an undiagnosed reproductive illness. He didn't want money to be the reason someone avoided care. We operate on a sliding scale, he explained. And for patients who truly can't pay, we have a foundation that covers everything. No debt. No collections. Her eyes widened. But why? He shrugged slightly, as if it were obvious. Because someone once showed me kindness when I couldn't afford it. A neighbor who slipped grocery gift cards into our mailbox when my dad lost his job. We survived because people cared. Lily's throat tightened. She remembered her mother doing that. Quietly helping families without telling anyone. Ethan continued, your mom volunteered at the community center every weekend. She tutored kids in reading. My little sister was one of them. She struggled badly, and your mom stayed late to help her catch up. That changed her life. Lily felt like the room had shifted again. Her mother had never talked about that. So this clinic, he said softly, is my way of passing that forward. For the first time in a long time, Lily felt seen, not as a burden, not as a bill, but as a person connected to something bigger. Over the next few weeks, she returned for follow-up visits. Each time, the staff treated her with warmth. Ethan checked in personally, making sure her treatment was working and answering every anxious question she had. Gradually, her fear of clinics began to fade. One afternoon, after an appointment, she lingered by the front desk. She noticed a bulletin board filled with thank you notes from patients. Women who had caught conditions early. Mothers who had been able to afford prenatal care. Teenagers who said they finally felt heard. An idea formed quietly in her mind. The following Saturday, Lily showed up at the clinic, not as a patient, but with a folder of sketches under her arm. She had always loved drawing but had abandoned it after her mother died. She found Ethan in his office and, blushing, handed him a drawing of the clinic's waiting room. Sunlight streamed through the windows in her illustration. The words, "You matter here," were framed by soft floral designs. I was thinking, she said nervously, maybe I could help decorate. Or design pamphlets. Or something. I don't have much money to donate, but I can do this. Ethan looked at the drawing for a long moment. His eyes grew bright. This is incredible, he said. We've been wanting to make the space feel even more welcoming. Would you consider working with us? Working, she echoed. He nodded. Paid. Part-time. We need someone creative to handle outreach materials and patient education designs. Lily felt her world tilt again, but in a different way this time. Opportunity had knocked, and it sounded like kindness. Within months, her artwork filled the clinic walls. Soft murals in exam rooms. Gentle illustrations explaining medical procedures in simple, comforting ways. Patients often commented that the space felt less intimidating, more human. Lily found her voice through her art. She began speaking at small community events, sharing how early checkups had protected her health. Each time she spoke, her hands trembled less. And Ethan continued to run his clinics quietly, refusing flashy interviews or grand openings. When local news tried to spotlight him as the young millionaire doctor, he redirected the attention to the foundation and the community volunteers. One evening, as Lily locked up after finishing a new mural, she paused in the hallway. She looked at the words she had painted near the entrance: "Kindness grows when we choose to pass it on." She thought about her mother. About the promise she had made. About the fear that once nearly kept her from walking through those doors. That single appointment had been more than medical care. It had been a bridge, between past and present, between grief and hope, between receiving kindness and giving it. Today, Lily is no longer invisible. She's confident, healthy, and studying graphic design at a local college with a scholarship partly funded by the clinic's foundation. And the young doctor who once recognized her from across a quiet suburban street continues to build spaces where compassion comes first. The truth is, we never really know how far one act of kindness will travel. A grocery card slipped into a mailbox. A volunteer staying late to tutor a struggling child. A doctor choosing care over profit. These small decisions ripple outward in ways we can't predict. If this story moved you, think about the quiet ways you can show up for someone today. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's listening without judgment. Maybe it's helping someone who's too shy or too afraid to ask. Share your own stories of kindness in the comments. You never know who might read them and find the courage to take that first step toward hope.